Hello, welcome to another episode of DJ Project Breaks Bad. Um, and I had finished the second season. Actually, I've been finished with it for quite a while. I actually watched all of it in one day, and there's 13 episodes, which is it's an investment, but it's not it's not as long of an investment as one might seem. And so far, I really like it. Actually, it made me realize that I guess if I wanted to make one complaint about the first season is that it didn't go on longer. In fact, the original plan was to do 9 episodes, but the Writers Guild strike of 2008, 2009 put a damper on that, so all they could do is 7. But they made the most of it, and mostly it's just because, and part of it is because I like the characters and I like to see more of them, and then also I'm curious to see how everything is develops. And actually, it's amazing in the second season alone. You're again assume that I'm talking about spoilers from here on in. So now that we got that out of the way, it starts where we left off in the first season with with Walt and Jesse having a deal with a distribution deal with Tuco. Um, they provide him with so many pounds of pure meth, and he'll in turn pay so much. But at the end of it, you find out that he's a little bit on the crazy side, and he's very willing to kill anybody he suspects as being a traitor or will go against him, even if it's accidental. He's very willing to do someone in. So it starts with that, and then through the course of 13 episodes, there's all of these twists and turns that affect everyone's lives. There's of course the long term or the sort of long term goals or milestones that are to be reached. There's the pending birth of Walt's um, daughter, Holly. I think they settled on the name of Holly, and then also his ongoing battle with lung cancer, which then takes a turn, and he finds out he's in remission, and about 80% of the tumor mass has been receded, and the only problem is that there's a big inflammation in his lungs, and then some tear in his esophagus from all of his chronic coughing. But that's really it. But this also puts a complication on because the other, but with you gotta take the bad with the good. Um, his efforts to cook meth and trying to be the next big game in town, especially after all kinds of events that happen, including Tigo's death and I guess just a continuing ambition to grow and to expand operations, and all for the sake of trying to take in as much money as possible to secure the future for his family when he's gone. Just adds more at stake and everything. It raises the stakes, and it also um, makes it more makes things much more complicated, including his own marriage. In fact, the way the second season ends, one of the things is that Skylar has threatened, and I'm pretty sure she's going to carry it through. And maybe I'm anticipating some kind of reconciliation, although it's probably going to make things even more complicated in the future. But basically, Skylar has left Walt because she's had to deal with his lies and secrecies and evasiveness for far too long, and he's never come clean to her about what exactly he has done and why he does what he does. So, but yeah, but all in 13 episodes. You go from making one distribution deal to trying to um, set to become the next big thing in town and hooking up with bigger networks and adding more players to it. And I think that's the thing that a second season of a show should do is if the first season is all about establishing your premise and establishing your characters, then the second season should take things up a notch. So your primary characters are deepened a bit, and then you may add on a few more just to keep the ball rolling. And this does it really, really well. Um, Second season, you have the introduction of Saul Goodman, the sleazy sort of strip mall lawyer. In fact, actually, one of the lines that I like is the way that Jesse describes the world about Saul Goodman. He's like, you know, when you're in serious trouble, you don't need a criminal lawyer. You need a criminal lawyer. And my response to that was, so one with a hyphen in the middle. And in fact, actually, Bob Odenkirk plays Saul Goodman, and yes, I've heard that the Breaking Bad spinoff is all going to be centered on him, and it's going to be called Better Call Saul. Um, anyways, but seeing Saul Goodman, I kind of think of him as uh, as he reminds me a bit of Lionel Hutz, except a lot more sleazy and a lot more competent. um, and in fact, actually, I kind of think of him as sort of a worthy successor to Lionel Hutz. Um, at least he'll get the job done and not completely, totally embarrass himself. But actually, seeing his advertisement using using cheap video effects and chroma key sets, it kind of reminded me of sort of the adverts that you saw in that I remember seeing in Albuquerque. So even though Albuquerque, I'm sure, has changed in the 20 plus years since I've last been there, it's nice to know that that local adverts are still cheap as all hell. Look cheap as all hell. Um, so yeah, I mean, so far I really like it, and I guess maybe throughout the course of this, it'll be a chance to talk about what makes a good television series because um, it gets thrown around a lot, especially with popular shows, and say, oh, this is a great show. But what really makes a great television show? And I think what it comes down to is that it's a balance of different components. I talked about in the previous episode about the balance between character and plot and storyline, where you need to have, or I think what makes a great show is you have compelling and engaging characters, but they're also participating in a storyline that moves, and you feel like it's moving in a particular direction, where you can anticipate an end and result, but at the same time, it can also surprise you in between, and also have it be a genuine surprise, not just having a surprise for the sake of having a surprise. But I think the other thing that um, and maybe this is probably better suited for a future season, but I guess I can talk about it since this came to mind. But there's a balance of tone and also a balance of pacing where you feel like the story moves at a pace that it's not too slow as to feel like everything is dragged, where every single moment is stretched beyond its uh, goes beyond its expiry date. But it also doesn't move too fast so that you don't miss anything. You don't get a chance to savor any particular moments. I mean, for instance, in the middle of it, Jesse gets an apartment for himself after he gets kicked out of his aunt's house, and meets with the manager, um, and little by little, you get to know her, and then also little by little, it becomes beyond just a landlord-tenant relationship. It actually becomes a full-blown romantic relationship, um, and also one involving drugs. In fact, I kind of got a Requiem for a Dream vibe from it. She strikes me as being very similar to Marion Silver, played by Jennifer Connelly in that film. Um, but anyways, but you have a chance to sort of savor that relationship, and maybe if I wanted to really be nitpicking, I maybe it's just the romantic in me. Uh, there could have been a little bit more to them, but at the same time, I understand what that relationship is about and what it meant to Jesse, and even what it could have meant for Walt, because there's at a certain point where Jesse sort of it becomes a Walt sort of I get the sense that Walt is sort of a surrogate father figure for Jesse, whether he wanted it or not. But the way that Walt engages with Jesse, he acts like the father that he probably should have had, or even could have had. And it's not to say that Jesse comes from a broken background. And his parents were fairly loving, and he was well supported and well taken care of. He just made a lot of bad decisions, and I think he also was not entirely understood. And I think because of that, he drifted into a certain crowd that led him to do the things that he would eventually do. So, so Walt is sort of acting like a father figure to him, and so now when you throw in this relationship, it kind of complicates that, and so then it becomes a battle of who wins out. Do I listen to my fellow business partner and subconscious father, or do I listen to my new girlfriend, and sort of like who's pushing and pulling me. But anyway, so back to the whole. I went way off track, but back to the idea of balancing of pacing. I feel like the it moves along in a I don't want to say consistent speed, because sometimes it speeds up a bit, sometimes it slows down. So it has a really good balance of keeping things moving, but at the same time having those moments where you can sort of step back and savor the characters and the moments. And then the other thing I mentioned is that there's a balance of tone. Even though this is fundamentally a crime drama, it doesn't mean that you can't have moments of comedy. And I've mentioned this before, that I feel that there are a lot of comedic moments, but a lot of it is very dark. Very, if you like your dark comedies, it definitely has that in spades. And so it's not exclusive. So it's not always intense. It doesn't always have this weight. And even characters that seem to be designed as comic relief, they don't necessarily act entirely as comic relief characters. In other words, usually when you describe a character as being the comic relief, that seems to be their only job, is to make jokes and crack wise and not really have a lot more to them. Their mode can be funny or can be humorous, but they can also be serious if need be. A really good example of this is, of course, with Hank, Walt's brother-in-law and also the DEA agent. He cracks jokes and has his own particular humor, especially with his fellow agents in the Albuquerque office. But if he needs to be serious, he can be. And actually, really good moments when Walt was, I forget what news this was. I think it was after he found out that the cancer was in remission. I think there was a party that Skylar threw to celebrate that, and then he's kind of feeling a little bit melancholy for, I guess, for a bunch of reasons. Just the like, maybe just the shock of it, but then also maybe there's a part of him that thought, okay, I don't have a reason to keep doing what I set myself up for doing. So, anyways, he's sort of in a melancholic spell, and so he does it by sitting out in the back in the pool with a bottle of tequila and taking shots, giving Hank a glass, and then eventually giving his son, Walt Jr., or Flynn, a drink. And he just keeps doing. Now, Walt Jr. or Flynn, he likes to call himself Flynn. It's the whole, I'm a teenager, I want to assert my own identity, I want to, not just be identified as my father's son. Um, but anyways, so he's 16, and if someone offers you a shot of tequila, it's kind of a rite of passage. It's also a bit irresponsible, I admit, but it's one of those, okay, it shows that I'm trusted and I'm closer to adulthood, and I can be responsible for this. Then Walt takes it into grossly irresponsible territory by keep feeding him shots, and Hank sort of senses this, and it's like, you're really crossing the line here. So again, this is coming from the supposed comic relief character, but then he has a moment of seriousness and genuine drama, and it comes off well. It doesn't sound forced. Nothing about Breaking Bad feels forced. It's not to say that it's definitely constructed. You definitely know that the characters are designed to do a certain thing and go in a particular direction. But I never feel like any moment, and I'm sure I'm going to say this throughout all the seasons, but I never really felt that a moment was forced. I never felt like it was a moment for the sake of having a moment, that everything is both a result, is both a genuine action from the characters and also the characters responding to a particular situation. Actions and then reaction, and it all seems very genuine, and it doesn't feel contrived, even though it's a constructed show, and all the plot points are laid out, but the way it's executed and the way it flows. It just comes through very well. I guess the last thing I think I kind of alluded to this in the last episode, but I know a lot has been said about particular performances, and most especially with Bryan Cranston, and then also Aaron Paul as well. Both of them were honored. They were certainly nominated several times, and I think they won several times. I know Cranston won several times, but I believe even Aaron Paul won a couple of times for Best Supporting Actor in a dramatic series. So those two are recognized for their performances. But I do believe that even if one actor or even a couple of actors receive attention, they're only as good as their supporting players. And as far as supporting characters, I don't feel like that there is a bad character. And by bad, I mean a character that feels out of place or out of the ordinary. And I know there's going to be some characters that are going to become reoccurring characters. His new distributor, for instance, who also is the owner of Los Polos Hermanos, which I'm sure if I had their chicken, it would almost be like having crack. I would just end up buying buckets full of it. It's like, damn, this chicken is so good. Oh yeah, he's also a drug distributor. Damn it, son of a bitch. So I know he's going to be actually. There's a moment where he shows up at the DEA field the Albuquerque office where Hank is, and as a representative of the community, and I just couldn't help but think of like The Godfather, and also Traffic. The idea of having a public face and supporting all these campaigns and everything, but you're also pushing certain things, and also getting the government to kind of side with you and make sure you get some protection in that, some unspoken protection. It's not to say that he's going to be making any deals with DA. He just wants to know how he can be one step ahead and such. But anyways, so the point is that I don't. So the point of all of this is that, again, I'm sorry for going way off track. I want to make sure that it's all worth it. These little not outbursts, but just this explanation, as it were, this expository thing. I don't know why my nose is stuffing. I apologize, but but yeah, I don't feel that there's a bad character. I feel like there's a character. I feel like, oh, why is that really necessary? I feel like everybody's used appropriately. Everybody shows up at the right amount of time, and even if they do appear for a few episodes or fairly briefly, I feel like that they're memorable, and also they feel like they're real people. And so again, so far so good. And again, I'm really amazed of how much had happened over the course of the second season alone, and I anticipate a lot more stuff happening in the next season and then the seasons thereafter. I can probably imagine that while there will always be something new and there will be twists and turns, especially since I get the feeling that Walt's ambition is to keep going higher and higher up and kind of seeing how far he will go. I can also imagine a certain point where there's only so much new that you can introduce, and so when that happens, it will just be a chance to assess where everybody is, and also to get a sense of what or to have the consequences of your actions come back to them. As you're growing up, even all the stuff that you've done before kind of comes back and bites you in the ass. That's how karma works, right? So in other words, I can't. So I imagine there's a point where it will hit a plateau as far as new developments, but it won't take away from the quality because the characters are interesting and the way things are played out, or it will continue to be compelling because the characters have depth and there's other things going on, and it's not just all about Walt. And I guess that's the other part of having the balance is it's not all focused on this particular goal. There's other things happening. Again, you had Skylar pregnant, and at a certain point she even goes back to her old job, and things happen there, or things are hinted that things will happen in the future. So things are always happening. It's never just about its main premise, but it all works together. It doesn't feel like a distraction or feels like it's I don't feel like anything is needless. I don't feel it doesn't feel contrived. It doesn't feel none of the things that take me out of it. The things that remind me that I'm watching a television show. Anything that doesn't make me think about the artifice is also a sign of a really good show. So yeah, again, so far so good. I really like the second season, and I anticipate it continuing on, and I'm looking forward to see where else this leads. So that was the second season, and on to the third. And until next time, take care.